You need to perform, no matter your mental health.
I was like, should we just go crazy?
We're not going to be here in 80 years, right? That's just the truth.
Like, no one really gives an F about you.
I've met very poor people, millionaires, even a couple of billionaires, and at the end, they are all the same.
Really awful.
Quite frankly, it's much less sexy.
What's going on?
It pumps me up.
We had this catchphrase, it was global domination. I was so energized, I thought we were going to take over the world.
What a story, what a story.
It felt bloody great.
If all the money wouldn't exist, would you still be doing that and still pushing there?
But yeah, I think it's the best way to live.
So, James, lovely to have you on the show. Maybe before we jump right in, let me just give a quick introduction to our audience. Who you are, what you do, why you're here. Why are we here? Who knows? But yeah, you're founder and CEO of the largest Airbnb management company in the world, right? You Forbes 30 under 30, investor, serial entrepreneur. You've seen it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? And yeah.
Lots of ugly recently.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, now you're here with us, and we're gonna explore the themes a bit of how you got here, because as all entrepreneurs who've been at it for a couple of years, the road is not always beautiful. Actually, in most cases, is a beautiful story that hopefully ends well, but there's a lot of things down the road that didn't go so well. So yeah, maybe the first topic I'd like to kind of enlighten our audience with is really your path. Like, where did you start? How did you grow this business to the huge business it is today? Right, I think at some point you also raised $15 million, something like that, in a Series A, right?
Yes, well, seed and Series A.
Seed and Series A, yeah. So I'm pretty sure there's a very interesting story there. So I'd love to hear it as an entry point, and then we'll rock and roll from there.
Sure, yeah. Started about 2015. I was 24 at the time. I had left my job in banking to go and learn to code.
Oh, you're a banker. I didn't know that, actually.
And then I put my bedroom on Airbnb, moved into the lounge. And was like, okay, this is actually earning a hell of a lot of money. And I wonder what would happen if I put the whole property, so I went away to Italy briefly. Did an experiment to see exactly how much money I would make. And I was like, okay, this is like 3 times the rent. This is really interesting. If I was a landlord, I would be switching to this immediately. So I looked at options in the market. I'm skipping ahead anyway, sorry. Yeah, while I was learning to code, I was Airbnb-ing, and then I kind of like, had the problem myself, as I say.
So you're a banker and coder?
No, I left.
And then turned entrepreneur?
I left. I was at UBS after coming back from New York.
Yeah.
I worked on Wall Street briefly, and then learned to code at something called Makers Academy. Highly recommended.
Okay.
Met loads of. Well, it itself was a startup, so that was kind of inspiring as well. The founders were very inspiring. But through having to pay the fees for that course and my rent, I put my room on Airbnb and felt the real pain myself and also the benefit. The benefit being my whole rent being covered just by one room being rented.
That was in London?
Yeah, in London, in Pimlico.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's quite nice and central.
Yeah.
So it was great for Airbnb. And then I put the whole place on Airbnb as kind of an experiment, to see just how much I could make. And I ended up making 3 times the rent.
Sounds like a good ROI, right?
Very good. So I was like, I wonder, can landlords do this? If I had 20 properties, would I be doing this on every single one? Is it just Pimlico? So I looked it up, looked at like the sorts of amounts people were getting. I was like, oh, okay. Right, there must be an agency, something that will manage this for me. And there was literally nothing. And I was
and which year was that? Sorry.
So this was the end of 2014.
Okay, yeah.
And I was actually really hungover on Boxing Day, 2014. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Am I coding? Am I becoming a coder? That doesn't really feel right. I was having this existential crisis and obviously hungover. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to pursue this idea, see if it works. Another experiment. I put up a website with all it was email field and Airbnb hassle-free hosting. And then I fired, got the coupons from Google, the coupons from Facebook, fired some ads at it and thought, I'll leave it, a week, see what happens. I did some basic maths off the back of that experiment. I was like, okay, if I literally signed up 20% of these clients, which didn't feel too unrealistic after speaking to some of them, then the amount I could be earning would be like 200, 300,000 just on that small experiment. So I felt,
With one apartment or
no,
with multiple?
With managing other people's apartments from the landing page experiment.
Yeah. So kind of in a way, you've built a wait list to see, okay, who would actually join?
Yeah.
Who would be interested? And then kind of crunch the numbers from there.
I think I was really lucky. And I think something people overlook when it comes to starting a business is the timing.
Yeah.
I frankly got very lucky on timing. I guess maximize the opportunity. And there was a nascent demand in the market to jump into the, letting their homes on Airbnb.
Yeah.
So every day I was a 24-year-old kid and people were giving me their keys. I'm like, yeah. Go and manage my property, take 20%. I was like, okay. Now I've got the keys to your £4 million home. I didn't have any parties.
A sick home party.
No parties. But yeah, so we grew like that, and then we got our initial few clients, and actually we didn't get. I thought we were getting our initial few clients, but then my sales ability was limited. Let's say. But I kind of used that as leverage to then go to investors. So there was an accelerator called Pi Labs. Great accelerator, still going today. Actually, we were on the first cohort.
Okay.
And they gave us our first 20 grand, which, to a 24-year-old at that time felt like quite a lot of money. More importantly, they gave us fancy office space. So that allowed us to kind of build that team and really actually start delivering on the service for clients. And that was super exciting. And within literally 2 months of starting that, we had hundreds of clients.
Really?
It was absolutely crazy.
So you had a product market fit right away, basically?
Right away. Wow. Right away. And we started...
And that was your very first venture?
That was pretty much my very first venture. I did something when I was about 14.
Okay.
Made some money online, affiliate marketing. But other than that was pretty much
So you're always kind of entrepreneurial thinking in a way.
Yeah, I guess I always saw the internet as an opportunity, as a blank canvas to build something, to build something on. So leverage that situation as well to then raise our kind of pre-seed. This is where the first hurdle, in fact, every single round I've raised, someone has dropped out at every single point. Is it me or I don't know? Maybe it is.
I think it's normal. We had the same in our projects that you have investors, they say, yes, I'm in 100%. And then those are the ones that drop out. And the ones who say, maybe, they are the ones who commit at the end. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, no,
it's weird.
So we had a really interesting situation where actually there was another company coming up alongside us. They were called Hostmaker. In 2020.
We don't like those guys, right?
Well, they're not around anymore.
Okay.
I'll come on to that later. So they were coming up at the same time. They actually ended up raising quite a significant seed. And then that...
What does significant mean in London? Because I can tell for Zurich, for example, where I'm from, the numbers are very different to Silicon Valley, of course. The numbers are probably very different to London. What's the usual range in a pre-seed, in a seed, Series A in London?
Well, we're also talking, 11, 10 years ago now.
Oh, yeah.
So that
lovely
inflation. Not just inflation, I think, VC inflation as well.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think it's around £2 million.
Okay.
So they had raised around that. Maybe they'd raised 3 actually.
Yeah.
And then that sparked, us to go from raising 400K into that sort of, not quite that bracket, but we had had investors interested. But frankly, I was the impostor syndrome thing started at that moment because it's like, okay, why, what's going on? I don't deserve to be running this thing. This is crazy. So we had this investor interest, and we got a term sheet. Actually, it was quite a big term sheet, quite a nice, good VC in London. And I don't know what I did, but in the end, I think I do. Just being 24 and naive, probably. But in the end, they were like, you know what? We're not going to give you the money unless you're not CEO. And I was like,
oh, really?
Oh, interesting. Okay. And I had a lot of conviction in my own ability.
yeah, as we all do.
Some might call it arrogance. And I was like, okay, that's a really interesting meeting. A really interesting thing to say.
But what prompted them to say that? Was there a reasoning behind that decision for them that they communicated towards you? Or?
Well, my memory's awful.
It was just random.
It was 9 years ago. I don't think it was random. I wasn't the best communicator.
Okay.
No, I was cripplingly feeling that impostor syndrome.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah.
I think that's very real for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially as my background is not like maybe, there's probably 60-70% of startup founders in the UK, probably private school, are told throughout their lives, you're brilliant, you're going to do big things.
Yeah.
And my background wasn't like that at all. And actually, I was probably on a mission: prove something to the world, prove the world wrong, not that the world cares. But
in a way, you did now, retrospectively.
I guess. And yeah, so there was always this self-doubt and that feeling like, oh, what are you doing? You're faking it. This is ridiculous. And then when that happened, I was like, oh, someone caught me. They actually were like, oh, maybe the CEO should be the guy that went to private school.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, interesting. I obviously declined that
so you didn't
suggestion.
Take their money.
I did not take that money. And I'm glad we didn't, actually, because it would have pressured us to grow at a speed we weren't ready for. We didn't have any of the technology built. And I think maybe the world has moved away from that Uber blitz scaling model that they say, said probably in the late 10s. That's how you build a business. I think it's probably moved a bit away from that now. But at the time, it was like, right, go, go, go.
Yeah.
But we just didn't have any technology ready. We had spreadsheets. We didn't even have the ability to properly know which home a key was related to, just basic things, So we were losing keys. I mean, it was a shit show for sure. And then but we were lucky. We got the 300-400K in at that point, and that was
just from a different investor, basically.
From, I guess we were already raising it, that sort of number. And then the other investor came in left field.
Okay.
And was like, here's actually a much bigger check.
Yeah. How much was that check?
I think it was up to 2.
Okay.
Up to 2, not quite 3, which I think is, could be all be wrong.
Million.
But, $1 million, yeah.
Wow.
I think our competitor raised 3 and that one was up to 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was super interesting and quite exciting just to raise that 400 because frankly, I was putting everything on my credit card. I was not paying myself anything. I was lending the company thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
Well, I really had thousands of pounds at the time.
Yeah.
So it was super, super also at the time we just got sued for 60K, which is more than obviously our whole revenue because I made a stupid decision with a recruiter.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. If that money hadn't have gone through, then it would have all been over. And then we used that money to basically grow, build the technology. There was this one moment where I remember sitting with my co-founder over a beer. I think it was in the late February 2016. I was like, should we just go crazy and just put tube ads all over the tube? And he was like, no. I was like, why not? We're having a growth problem. We're not going to survive if we don't grow. Let's just go for it. And I ended up speaking to some other founders and got a connection to get some cut price advertising. But I remember it was our last 60K. I didn't really know the concept of runway at the time. But I was like, well, that's 30K is half the money we've got in the bank. That's fine.
That sounds
probably
sounds risky, right?
And my attitude was, well, this is one big experiment.
Yeah.
If this is we're not going to build a small business here. We're going to build either something big or fail. And that was those were the two. It was binary as far as I was concerned.
So you almost went all in a way, right?
Well, we did go all in.
You did go all in.
I did go for those ads.
Yeah.
Much actually to my co-founders' annoyances. And we went for it. And that was actually the exact right thing to do, because it was a catalyst internally for building the tech quicker. It was a catalyst internally for getting all the marketing tracking going. Everything just kind of figured itself out. So taking that sort of risk, I think, is actually really important. Although I'm not sure if it's a risk I would take again today, in all honesty. But hey. So then we moved on from there, and then we had another investor. Yeah, we're going to invest, because now you've grown. It's 4 million. Check's 4 million seed round. That was going well. I think we almost got a term sheet, or we did get a term sheet. That fell through as well. So another one. No reasons other than them, I think, for this one. And then we had to scramble around again, find another lead investor.
And how much money did you have in the bank at that time? God, not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much, huh?
At this point, I was starting to understand runway as a concept. And at that point, I think we had 35, 40 employees as well. So that was starting to become...
You had 40?
Yeah, because we were basically doing everything.
Because that's a large kind of burn rate every month, I can imagine, right?
And in my infinite wisdom, I'd launched a new city. We'd gone up to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So we were, at the time that felt like ridiculous, but I guess good for the growth story. And then we did find a new investor just in time. The terms were okay, but just in time. And then that actually gave us exactly what we needed. And then we actually ended up launching with that money, Paris, Australia. And that was just, I think it was only I don't even remember the amount of money, maybe 3 million.
Yeah.
And that was good. I mean, we got a foothold in Australia. Edinburgh was doing really well at that point.
How do you manage that? I mean, how many cities do you have right now in the current business as we speak?
I think 30 plus, something
30
like
plus.
That. Yeah.
Let's actually dive a bit later into the infrastructure. How do you manage that? Because, it's hard enough to manage, 50 to 100 staff here, right? Physically, but if it's distributed all around the world, that's going to be, let's put a pin in that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Where was I?
You were at, scaling with the investors' money to Paris, to Australia, to anywhere in the world, really.
Yeah. So we got that money in, and we were scaling. We launched all these cities. We had this catchphrase. It was global domination. I was so energized. I thought we were going to take over the world. I thought we were the next Uber. I thought it was going to be super exciting. And frankly, it was. It was really exciting. We raised, we'd raised that money, and we were spending it, and we were growing. And
how do you feel when the first large check comes around, like multiple millions? You see that number in your bank, and how does it feel?
Yeah. So I think
pretty good, right?
It felt bloody great.
Bloody great. I can imagine.
I remember, I think I was like 26.
Yeah.
So, and I just remember looking at it in the bank account, being like, I've literally not seen that number on a computer screen in a bank account ever before. And that is just an insane amount of money. So yeah, very energized throughout that period and very excited. And
how long did this feeling hold on to? Like, was it more like a temporary feeling for you, where after a week or two it was like normality, or was it like really it hyped you up for a couple of months or years? Who knows?
I think years, actually.
Years,
I would say, because we had a good run of it. Things at that point. It was exactly the right time for the market, and the whole industry was just booming.
Yeah.
So we were very lucky, again, on timing, but also obviously to have got that sort of resource. And we were just hiring people at a rate that I can't even imagine now. Like just the amount of interviews and new senior leadership team members every week. And it was absolutely insane and really, really exciting.
So how many employees at that point? So that was the pre-seed or the seed? How would you say it?
That was the seed.
That was a seed round, right?
Yeah. That was the seed.
And how many employees did you have at that time? when all of this happened?
So when we actually did the seed round, so I think that's when the 40 was.
Yeah, 40, huh?
And then when that happened, and then after that is when we grew. We've got our own office, and had 3 floors. It was not big floors, but 3 floors in an office, which was pretty cool. And then we grew out the tech team, grew in Poland as well, and used that money to really expand rapidly into all those places. And then it was very clear that, in my eyes at least, that there was put money in, get massive growth. It was actually a 1-to-1 ratio, amount of money raised to annual revenue, which was crazy. I was like, okay, this is a clear.
So you found the formula in a way that
we
worked.
We definitely did.
Yeah.
And then we went about raising our Series A. When we were in, all the countries I mentioned, Australia. I can't remember that we pulled out of probably.
When the series start to have a letter, it starts to be interesting, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Right? And I think that was when it got very real, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to proper investors. You're talking about 7, 8, 9 million pounds. Like,
is it different discussions that you had in a pre versus in a Series A, or did the investors ask the same questions?
Oddly, I think the seed and pre-seed were much harder to achieve.
Can imagine, actually.
Than the Series A. But that's probably because we had definite product market fit. We were growing very quickly. Revenue was just like you want it, up and to the right. And you can show that in a graph, and it's not a lie, which is fantastic. So that was super exciting. And then there was it was relatively easy. I can't, to raise our Series A.
So how does this process work? You already have your existing investors network, right? Obviously. Did these guys invest again? Did these guys connect you with new investors? Did you literally do email marketing to outbound to get investors? Because I've heard anything like at this point. Anything seems to work for someone out there.
I've invested off email marketing before, but I've never done email marketing. Maybe I should try it. That's a really good question. I guess it's so long ago now. And it's the last time I properly raised a big round that. So all of our existing investors, I think, did reinvest, into the Series A. Yeah,
which is a good sign.
It was a great sign, yes, absolutely. And how did I don't recall actually, unfortunately, how I found the Series A investor. I think we just had, it was a family office, I think. So it was an introduction from someone I knew.
Yeah.
Not sure if they would want me to say their names. I won't.
Better not, probably. Family offices like to be discreet.
Exactly. So that's kind of how we approached it, and it was actually a really easy experience because we had all the growth and we had all the right metrics. So I think that is the number one way to raise money. Make sure you've actually got product market fit. Yeah. Make sure you've actually got growth. And I think
which is the hard part, right?
Exactly. Use your money efficiently.
Yeah.
I think it's true when they say, you should growth heals all wounds. I think that's absolutely true. Staff, business, everything, investors. As long as there's growth.
And how does the pitch look like? Because if you think about it kind of from just a naive one's perspective, it's in a way a service business, right? Probably some technology in there. I mean, obviously, right? Otherwise, probably you wouldn't have been able to just raise so much money just to the service business. So how did you package that? And did that packaging change in the pre-seed, seed, Series A?
Well, we were always very certain on what we were. And that was a tech-first company. I always said we are a tech company, not a service company.
Yeah.
Was I being hopeful? Maybe. We were obviously, we were a service company. I think one idea I did have at that time that we now have done is something that is now called the partnership. So we actually allow entrepreneurs in their local cities and areas to start their own house, their local house. Yeah. We do the marketing for them. We help them with that. And we do the guest experience and all that sort of stuff. But they do the on-the-ground operations. And that is actually where I wanted to take the business between the seed and the Series A. The problem is, when you're growing at that rate with one product, you can't just go off and pivot because then the investors are like, what are you doing?
What the hell are you doing? Of course. Of course.
You're growing so quickly.
Of course.
I guess I made the decision, fine, we'll double down on that model. That's a regret, I would say.
Yeah.
That is a regret, because I knew instinctively, and I think when we were raising the Series A, some of the other people around me were like, does this have legs at scale? Does this really work? If you take away the human element, can you actually scale this properly and have a good experience? And I think actually, honestly, the answer was no, you can't. You do need that human element. So even in our direct business now, we have pods who essentially look after the direct relationship with the client and have that full autonomy and ownership. So that was a problem we had not yet found, but I guess we all instinctively thought was there, and probably is the reason why when we did raise the Series A, yes, we grew very quickly. We 1 month had 800 homes come through the door in 1 month. I mean,
that was a stressful month.
If we hadn't churned them, the ARR on those homes would be in the millions. But we were churning at a really fast rate, the highest we'd ever churned.
So what was your churn rate at that point?
I think it was like 6% a month.
6% a month.
So it was quite high, and we were, it was a very leaky bucket.
And were you able to identify why are they churning, or did you
lots of people
try to figure that out?
Yes, lots of people were churning in the first bit of the relationship. I guess they bought into the vision of, okay, I'm going to earn money from my home. The realities of some of that maybe weren't managed well by us, expectation management. But also, I guess, people are coming into your home. Glasses will get broken. Things will happen. It won't look exactly how you left it. And those are all, problems that you eventually find out, and then you leave.
So it was mostly people who have never done this before. It's not like seasoned Airbnb owners who have done this hundreds of times who come to you. It was more almost like, in a way, more kind of just a regular person doing this with you, or what was the clientele that you had?
Yeah, in fact, we almost, up until that point, we actually have a few, I guess we call them multi-property landlords now. But at that time, we didn't. It was very much either you're a landlord with one property or two properties, or you're, what did we call them? Transient, I guess. You're going away on holiday, or maybe you're going away for a fixed period of time. And frankly, those clients were the ones that had the worst experience, made us the least money. But I guess cost the lowest amount to acquire. Of
course.
And we didn't learn that lesson quickly enough, because we were looking at cost per lead, we were looking at cost per acquisition, and we were optimizing on those numbers. And if you optimize just on those numbers, then what you end up getting is your easiest to acquire customer, which is generally the one that
you don't want. It's true.
Is going to spend less time thinking about it, because it's less of a risk and an investment. So we should have gone after those, more of the landlord personas and that sort of thing. But yeah, so what we ended up doing is spending that money on rapid growth. It was rapid. It was huge. We were making lots of mistakes along the way, but we did get the curve going in the right direction, and we needed to keep spending in order to do that. I think some months we were burning, £500,000.
Oh, really?
Total.
Wow.
We were properly taking risks. We had backing from the investors going, agreed, get that curve and go for the B and keep going. And then, so we did the summer, I guess, after raising that money. And the summer was brilliant because loads of people travel in the summer. They pay a lot to travel in the summer. And then we started hitting October. And then it was like, oh, yeah, revenue's going to go down. That's weird. Obviously. And we've got this cost base of, multiple millions per month. How are we going to sustain that? And that's when I think both internally and as in internally in the company and also internally in my mind, it started to realize, oh, there's a problem. And that's when we first said, okay, we actually need to start looking at the cost base. And what does that mean? Oh, wait,
And how many employees at that point?
Oh, wow.
Just to put a number?
I think we're looking at 250, maybe
250
300.
people. Wow.
Yeah.
Burning you like
globally.
$500,000 a month. Something like
Burning
that.
$500,000 a month, yeah, with offices in Australia, New Zealand, with people in them and managers everywhere and, multiple layers of management.
Yeah.
And, what you think you have to build when you're building.
Was that a good or bad idea? Multiple layers of management, I mean.
Yeah. It feels right at the time.
Okay.
You feel like, okay, there's 5 people. You can't possibly manage 5 people. But I think one key problem when you introduce that level of management is you get people just looking up for their decision making.
Yeah. Not thinking.
Exactly. And fearful about being able to make their own decisions. And then you may as well not have the management at all. And it delays decision making. It delays, feedback as well. People protecting their roles, protecting what, their little empires they've built. It just gets so messy.
Yeah.
And I found my role at this point, before the October actually, was just repeating one-liners. What's our strategy? It's global domination. I would go into a meeting and be like, okay, why are we talking about all this stuff? It's not relevant to global domination. It's like supervillain words, but some reason that was resonating well in the business.
And how was, okay, you have 250 employees at that point. How does your day-to-day look like? You wake up, you do what?
I would say I didn't do much, but a lot of my time was taken up.
Okay.
At the beginning, you're in spreadsheets, looking at data, making decisions, looking at clients going, oh, what happened? Why did that happen? How can I troubleshoot that? What's the biggest problem? But at that point, you're like, the problems get surfaced to you, but then also, I think internally in me, I was like, well, I don't know any better than these people I've hired. Yeah. What I didn't realize is I cared a lot more than the people I hired.
Of course.
And caring a lot more is
what matters.
Is so much more important.
Oh yeah.
Necessarily than just intelligence or talent or anything like that. Yeah. So it took me a while. In fact, only after our Series B kind of fell through did I go, oh, probably went too far the other way.
What would have been the number there for the Series B that we were aiming for?
I think it's $20 million.
Raised.
Yes. So
at a valuation of?
The time that was about £15, I think.
Yeah.
And that would have been at a valuation of, it wasn't actually that much higher than our previous one. Our previous one was 43, I think. Am I making up the numbers? No, it's 34.
Same.
My dyslexia. Getting those numbers the wrong way around. And then I think the next one was not much higher. Pre-money at about 40.
Yeah.
And that would have been post, I guess.
Yeah.
60, something.
Yeah. Yeah.
£55. So obviously that's very exciting. And it wasn't necessarily the deal we wanted. And actually, I guess we skip forward here, but actually, I remember I went on holiday to San Francisco and a deal came through then and I looked at it, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. Yeah. My instinct.
The Series B? The
Series B, I looked at it and said, my instinct said no. It's from a New York investor who we'd met a few times, had a relationship with my CFO. And I just felt, you know what? Could we just make this profitable? Could we turn this into profitable company now? And I really wish maybe I had made that decision right then. I think it would have been better for my mental health.
So you felt it already?
I did. I was already frankly, I was already depressed.
Yeah.
I think that started at the moment, or just before actually the moment when we started having to let people go that I mentioned earlier, that October moment.
And then was that like between Series A and Series B, or?
Yeah, so that was about a year after we raised the Series A.
So you went from 250 employees to?
Well, hang on. So we were at about the 300 mark at this moment.
Okay.
And we were hiring ahead of the B. Because because even at the end of that year, we're talking 2018, so it all happened very quickly. From 2015. We were hiring ahead of it, and I guess, but in 2018, when revenue was starting to come down, we're realizing we need to right size this. And that's when I was like, okay, we didn't even make big changes, but I guess the mindset shifted to people that I respect, need to leave. And that wasn't something that I liked doing. I thought it was, I guess it's something I never thought I'd have to do, which is really naive and stupid. But when everything's going right, you don't think about the things that could go wrong. And I think maybe you should. But and then I was like, oh shit, it's not as brilliant as I thought it was going to be. I don't really know what was going on in my head, but getting that offer in, I guess that happened at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, the slow kind of realization that, revenue's coming down, cash is depleting, it's possible we're going to run out of money pretty quickly. That kind of realization led to, probably because the high was so high, led to, a deep and dark thought process in my head. And probably, frankly, an over-reliance on alcohol slightly and socializing. Because my whole life, from the moment I pretty much moved to London, was building this company. So all of the people I knew, including my best friend, were all at my company. And I hadn't done anything outside my company. So I had integrated my whole life into this thing that is now becoming not quite, as high and perfect as it was. And I started looking at myself differently, I guess. Thinking, I'm a bit of a failure, which is hindsight stupid, obviously, because you're like, you've still done all that stuff and you still got to this point, but you weren't delivering on what your own expectations of yourself were. And that, that was just the beginning of a very deep and pretty poor mental health for me, I would say. And it's not something you think is, I didn't even know what mental health was until that moment. All my life, I was like, oh yeah,
it's all right,
I'm fine, everything's good. Until you're frankly, lying in bed, not wanting to get out, crying. It's to be completely blunt. You're like, why do I feel this way? What, Yeah. So that was before even we'd lost this thing that I didn't even really want. But I put it to senior leadership, basically. Why don't we just not take it? I think I remember this meeting, and everyone was like, well, we'll all leave, which is pretty much I think they just thought it was mental. Like, why would you not take that deal? It's money, and it will allow.
But you felt it was wrong.
Instinctively, I remember looking at it. I remember even speaking to some investors, and they were like, "Yeah, it doesn't feel great, honestly." Thought it was wrong, and then probably a mixture of me not really wanting it, being quite depressed, not having that much motivation at the time, led to not putting that much effort into finding follow-on investors. So we had the lead, but we didn't really have the follow-ons, which are usually the easy part.
Of course.
Find the lead, everyone else follows. But yeah, I was just thinking, I wasn't in a good place. And that, I would say, as well as my CFO, not putting that much effort. But sorry, mate.
So you're not on the best terms right now.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Okay.
It's just my perspective. All of those things together probably led to, I don't know, frankly, if you're coming to do an investment meeting, you've flown over from New York and then you've come to meet the CEO, you're the managing partner, you're like, he looks a bit, bit out of it.
Yeah.
Which I definitely was.
Yeah.
I was trying to lead this thing when I was desperate to leave, frankly, at that point.
But that was before you had to let off so many people?
Exactly. Yeah.
That was before.
That was before.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of that happened before. And then there was 4 months of, is it going to happen? I said we got the term sheet the end, well, probably the beginning of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 4 months till mid-April. I was like, happening? Is it not happening? What's going on? Flights to and from New York, meetings, investment committees. They were like, yeah, find the follows, let's go. And it was the day before we had probably our most promising follow-on meeting. But bearing in mind, I was doing all these meetings pretty much like out of it. I probably did a better job than I thought. And I'm thinking I did, but I wasn't awfully motivated. I felt the burden of responsibility to get it.
Also done, a bit burnt out, or would you not put it that way?
Out. I would, if I was burnt out, that's when it was.
The part, right?
Burnt out, depressed.
Yeah.
Personal life was a mess, frankly, probably because I was burnt out and depressed.
Yeah, of course. And what do you think was the catalyst for that? Was it working too much, getting burned out, which kind of was a domino effect for everything else? Was it another thing that started it, or what was it really?
I think, it was probably because the high was so high that it was so far to fall mentally that you just carried on falling. I think that was it. I was an absolute. Ruining friendships. I was just,
not your best version.
Not the best version of myself in any way, shape, or form.
And do you think your peers noticed it at the company that something was off, or you were able to hide it pretty good?
I think so. Yeah, I think people did notice.
They did notice
to a certain extent, especially people I was close to.
Yeah,
and bearing in mind all the people I was close to. In my head were people in my business. So some of my very close friendships and were all in my business.
Yeah.
So that was super tough, and that was all before the money.
So the big bang is still coming, right?
Yeah, exactly. So then, there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of meetings, a lot of different things between the January and the April. So my relationship ended during that time as well. So that added to the kind of mental stress.
You think because of that?
I think almost certainly.
Right.
Because of everything that was going on. I just wasn't a good version of myself, as you say, and wanted to be around me. Also, I just had no emotions. I was completely dead. Something I'd never experienced before. I was completely dead. I was like unable to talk about any emotion. But that's not great for a relationship. Yeah,
of course. Also not good for anything.
No,
quite frankly,
not,
right? It's
just go to work. Like, hello.
Yeah.
So that was a ride. And then come the April, I remember the calendar invite just slipping into my calendar. Accept, decline, 15-minute phone call, managing partner at firm, 2 hours later. I was like, I know what that is. It's going to be a F off. I guess I was hopeful it wasn't.
Yeah.
But we joined that call.
From the investor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joined that call, very quick call, basically said, you haven't found the follow as quickly as we'd like. And he said, look, my instinct's saying no. Frankly, he was right, because 6 months later it was COVID. But he wouldn't have been right if it wasn't for COVID. But he said, my instinct says no. I said, okay, thank you for polite as possible. And I remember the exact office I was in. It was right by the door to the stairwell. We were in like a 4 or 5 large open plan office building. And I just remember leaving that meeting and going up to the top of the stairwell, which is where you go out onto the balcony stuff if you could, which you couldn't, thank God. So there was no one up there. I just sat there crying 20 minutes, understanding quickly coming to the realization of what's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that was before I even spoke to the senior leadership team,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
They didn't know yet. Only you knew.
Only me and the CFO knew at this point.
Yeah, he was on the call too.
He was on the call too.
Mm-hmm.
He went somewhere else. I think he went downstairs. I went upstairs.
He was also...
I don't know what happened. What he
Okay.
did. I think he probably didn't express this, but the investor was someone he kind of personally brought in, and
Yeah.
I think he probably felt a burden of responsibility. And I remember coming downstairs. Like I spoke to my best friend and stuff like that, and then obviously composed myself. Half an hour later or so, senior leadership team meeting, and then probably did I cry again? I'm not sure. I think I didn't, but was definitely very close to it, and laid out that news that we need to come back the next day. Actually, we actually all came back into the office Saturday morning, and then a few of us went and got very drunk. Which is probably not a good idea given the meeting we had to do on the Saturday morning. But then, we met on the Saturday, and then it was very clear, okay, here's in general where we need, the sorts of numbers we need to be looking at. And that was essentially half the cost base in order just to survive to the summer. This was April.
Wow.
Yeah. So luckily we're in April, and that's, as I said earlier, is just before our good season.
Yeah.
So we were hopeful that would be, if we could get to the summer,
we can survive.
Okay. And that was our plan. Didn't help that, the CFO, who obviously would have been super helpful in that discussion, was ill for 3 months.
Oh, really?
From that point onwards. Which was unfortunate.
Like psychologically or physically?
Probably both. But
both.
I can't remember exactly what.
Okay.
He's in hospital. So
okay. Oh, wow.
Definitely something serious.
Yeah.
And then we just had to be decisive. And I think I was probably at that point, probably because I was a bit depressed, I was a bit dispassionate. I was like, as I said, my whole life was friendships were within my own company, which is something no one should ever do. And it's something I probably take it too far the other way now. I just refuse to socialize with anyone ever.
But I think it's the right approach, actually.
I think it's definitely the right approach.
For me, at least.
I agree. And it's a lesson, I guess, I learned at this moment.
Yeah.
But I took the attitude that we would put all the decisions in the hands of managers, whereas I probably should have rewarded with loyalty. So, but we ended up cutting about 40 to 50% of the staff on the Wednesday. So we did 2 days of basically all-day meetings on the Monday and the Tuesday after that happened, and cutting 40% globally of staff within a 3-hour period, apart from Australia. And that was really awful. I don't know how to put that in words, actually. It was, especially as I felt I had sold a dream to all these people, that they would, build something great. And then they weren't going to be able to do that with us anymore. And it felt awful. Pretty awful.
And what's the logistics there? So what's the absolute number you were actually letting off? You say 40, 50%.
Yeah,
A couple of hundreds?
It was a couple of hundreds.
Wow.
And at least in the office that day, just in London, it was over 100.
Yeah. So you have one large meeting with them in front of them?
We didn't do that. So no, sorry. So we did an all hands at the beginning of that day.
Yeah.
Globally.
Yeah.
I still think some of Australia was awake.
Yeah.
So we had as global as we could.
Yeah.
And then I basically explained exactly what happened. The investor pulled out. That means we need to enter survival mode. We're going to do some things that, raise some money. We're going to do a crowdfunding campaign. We're going to do all these things. But it's going to be tough, and the cost base needs to halve.
And everyone knew what that means.
Well, I then said, that means, there's going to be like 40% we're going today.
What was the reaction in the room?
Certainly quiet.
Quiet?
Deafening silence is probably the best way of putting it. And a few gasps for sure. I think some people knew what was up because the senior leadership team had been locked in a room for 2 days.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, they probably, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how people felt at that moment, to be honest. Obviously, I was concentrating on what needed to be done in those 3 hours. And that's what I said. Within 3 hours, you'll know. And I think that was the right way to do it. You have to let people know ASAP. You can't have the sword of Damocles hanging over people's necks. And then you have to try and move on from that. But, frankly, we lost probably another 25% over the next 3 months anyway.
Yeah.
So
they quit or what happened?
Yeah, I guess once a lot of people were staying for the dream, they wanted to build something.
Yeah.
And it became obvious that now we were managing something to get to profitability or to survive even.
And how many homes were you managing at that point? More or less.
Oh, can't remember. 3,000?
3,000.
3,000.
Okay.
Maybe. Something like that.
And that just worked? So you were able to let half of the people go and still just fine manage the 3,000?
Well, no. Definitely not.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, right? There were creaks in the foundations of the business, and those creaks were the lack of direct accountability on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
And operational scaling becomes really difficult, especially when you're scaling at 600 properties in 1 month. Trying to onboard all those properties and service business problems, which I know you're aware of.
Been there, done that.
So yeah, it became difficult, and we certainly had higher churn. But we had a menu of different things we were going to do, and we tried our best to do them. I guess I was very proud actually that in the August of that year, which felt a very long time between the April and the August, only 4 months, we actually were profitable, which was crazy to me. But August was our biggest time of the year, and the best time of the year for us. So I was proud of that, and that allowed us actually to go out there and then raise some debt financing.
Yeah.
It was $2.5 million.
Which was needed to keep going.
Which was needed to keep going. It was a bridging kind of financing before going out for a B again in the next year. We raised that, I believe, in January 2020. And then I guess we were very pleased with ourselves. We'd righted the ship. It was going well. Morale was definitely starting to improve. The last people that were still negative about the whole situation were starting to leave or had left. And it was looking good. And then something amazing happened. Amazing.
For once,
I got a call from one of the ex-co-founders who had left at this point. And he said, a friend of mine, I just found out Hostmaker's going into administration. And that, as I said earlier, was one of it was us and them.
Yeah.
We were the two kind of owning the market. And I was like, wow. Because the founder and I of that company have been at loggerheads. We're reporting each other to the Advertising Standards Authority. We were like advertising next to each other on the tube. He got all short-let management companies banned from advertising on the tube because of some crazy advertising. Obviously really riled me because that was a huge marketing tool for us. And yeah, we got the call and we were like, this is it. This is the moment. This is we'll win.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
The mission is basically complete.
And that was which month?
That was in February 2020.
So a bit less than a year after the whole,
yeah, about 10 months or so later.
Yeah.
After we'd righted the ship.
Yeah.
We were using the 2.5 million to see us through for a few years at that point. It was looking good.
Mm-hmm.
We were growing again.
Mm-hmm.
And
how does that feel? That was amazing.
Honestly,
right? Amazing and bad at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So I was there actually when the administration happened. I'm skipping forward slightly, and I was there when all those staff members in London were let go, and actually the founder cried in front of them, and I was like, oh, okay, this feeling. Like it was then, obviously the emotions were completely conflicted, and the feeling of like, oh shit, that's the dreams of all these people have been shattered. I guess that's a large amount of them knew what was going on. But yeah, that was awful. But to me, at that moment, you weren't obviously thinking about that, and I was like, wow, okay, we've got to do it. Like, there's no other. No matter what it takes, this has to get done.
Yeah.
So I set myself, the ambition of making this happen. So I met with them, and I met with the administrator or the future administrators of that company, and hired some kind of advisors. And we made it happen. That's shortening a very long story, but I remember the day it was meant to happen, which is the 28th of February. We were meant to meet the CEO of that company at his office. He wasn't replying. We were there outside, and their staff members were seeing us, being like, "What the hell's going on? This is crazy."
And they know you.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah.
And there was a few ex-staff members there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were seeing us, and then he didn't arrive till like 3, something like that. And the court documents had to be filed by 4. And then my new CFO and a large amount of the senior leadership team, I think there's about 12 of us in total, were there descending to like figure out, are we getting this done?
But so basically you were acquiring them, right?
We were acquiring everything but, I can't remember exactly, everything but a few things, as well as all their London contracts and all of their global entities.
And
so
how does that work? Like, is this number public or is this more?
Yeah. So it was 250K we paid for a company that was raising, with no debts, for a company that was raising 2 weeks earlier at 70 million. Yeah. So it was insane.
You got a sweet discount.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit of a discount. And some of that was deferred.
Yeah.
So we only ended up paying, I think, 100K.
Wow.
Because the rest was deferred 6 months.
Wow, okay.
Which comes in handy later when COVID hit.
Yeah.
So we thought we were getting a great deal. Obviously, COVID was kind of happening in Italy, but it was an Italy problem. It wasn't a UK problem. So that was the 28th of February, and that all went down. And yeah, we had to like kind of speak to all these different people. There was people in Thailand. There was people in all over the world of their entities, which they were actually much bigger outside of the UK than we were. So it was actually a great fit.
So how much revenue were you acquiring from them? Because I mean, if they raised that amount,
well, believe it or not, less than us.
Less than you, okay.
They raised a lot more than us, oddly. And what we didn't know is that they had raised from Airbnb.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and apparently they were potentially going to be bought by Airbnb.
Oh.
But Airbnb changed their mind and just gave them money instead.
Yeah.
So I think they'd raised something like 30, 40 million.
Oh.
And they had a lower revenue than us. So that was, I guess, I was proud of that fact.
Yeah.
But it also became very apparent they had a crazy cost base as well. But yeah, so we brought the entities in, and then I guess it was action stations for a couple of weeks, fixing all that, getting, communicating, just figuring out, what do we want to keep? What are we going to let go? Italy, we were like, well, we can't keep that. That's COVID era.
For now, yeah.
So we let that go straight away. And then literally, I think, when was the lockdown? I think it was the 23rd. And obviously for a few weeks before that lockdown, we were just hearing, restaurants, pubs are closing, all this sort of stuff. And it became very apparent very, very quickly, I think a week and a half. And we took on maybe 200 people from Hostmaker, maybe a bit less.
So what was the payroll back then? A month?
Oh,
a large sum of
we
money,
never even
right?
got to the end of a month.
Okay.
Because we had to then do it all over again and say
goodness.
to all of the Hostmaker employees that we brought on from in the UK at least, I'm sorry. I know it's only a week and a half. It was actually going quite well. I think there was a lot of integration. There was a lot of good feeling and going really well. Sorry, but there's no there's no support system here. So we're gonna have to let you go. That was
same setup as before. Same.
Pretty much, I guess. We hired them on temporary contracts anyway because we thought this might be a necessity, not because of COVID, but because just we didn't know what we were getting. We literally had no information. So that flexibility was necessary, and I guess luckily for the company, not necessarily luckily for them, that was where we had to go. And then we before even furlough was announced, we shifted to a 3-day kind of week, and basically said, we're hunkering down and going to try and survive COVID and figure it out. And then
you had a good feeling about it, or you knew?
I was still
stuff's about to go down.
Switching back to like my mental health at this point,
Yeah.
it had improved, but I was still probably
not your best version.
I was 80% bad still.
Okay.
And obviously I was hopeful, but
yeah.
And then it all like obviously. Then I found myself getting in a car with my friend, and we drove to Birmingham just the day before lockdown. And I had COVID in that car as well to top it all. So then COVID happened, and it was the same thing all over again. Luckily, we had the furlough scheme.
Yeah.
In the end, I think a week or two later, after the lockdown was announced, we furloughed absolutely everyone, including myself, in the UK. And Australia had a different system where they had payment of people actually at work rather than not active. So we ended up doing that. And then we were hopeful, 3 months maybe, and it'll be back to normal. Everyone will be fine.
Well,
that was optimistic.
More like 3 years.
Yeah, literally. And throughout that time, it got to the point where clearly we weren't making, it was a 95% drop in revenue.
Right.
All these Hostmaker homes were obviously leaving. In fact, all of our homes were leaving because they're like, well, it's illegal to Airbnb.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and do long lets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the market cleared out. We shrunk by 75% in homes and 95% in revenue. Maybe not 75%. In the end, it was 75%. Over that time, it was less than that. And then, it was all about rebuilding. But oddly, that felt a lot better than something that I felt, I was more in control of, right? The Series A and that process was certainly something that I had an impact on, and I could have done better, and I probably didn't do my best. And that is a lot harder to mentally deal with than, someone coughed somewhere and the world is now locked down for the next 2 years. The mental processing was obviously it was a lot worse, but it wasn't my fault.
It's like you had something to blame for in a way, right?
Exactly. And it was a genuine, it's not like an excuse. So I think, that was a lot easier. And actually that was kind of a rebirth for the business that was needed. It was a phoenixing almost.
Yeah, and everything was burnt down.
Everything was burnt down and we had to rebuild it back up.
Yeah.
Everyone in the senior leadership left. Everyone in every role in the business, bar 10 over that period, 3-4 years, left. And I think that was exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
And then we built back with this different model, which is this partnership model. So now we just have the direct model in a few European cities, but we now have partnership partners all over the world, really. Australia, New Zealand, in South Africa, in Dublin and everywhere, all over the UK. And that's a much more scalable model for us and actually plays to our strengths.
Yeah.
And we're back to 2,000 homes and we made profit in 2023. Probably won't in 2024, but 2025 is looking good and we're growing again.
Yeah.
So it's and my mental health has never been better.
What a story. What a story. What a story. I mean, yeah, it just shows that at the end, it all looks so great, right? But actually, in reality, the journey is anything but great.
Yeah,
right?
That's absolutely true.
And probably if people knew what it means actually to be an entrepreneur and these things possibly could happen, and you're the head of it and you need to perform no matter your mental health. When you're an employee, you can say, hey, I'm on sick leave for the next couple of months. If you're the founder and CEO and you're gone, your company's gone in most cases, at that stage. Absolutely. And I think many people, they don't want to look at that. They want to look at the fancy, nice things you have now, but not what was the actual journey like. And well, I mean, looking back, probably even for me, if I knew like how hard it actually is being an entrepreneur, I probably still would have been crazy enough to still do it, but I would have thought twice.
I think it's for a unique breed of person.
Yeah.
It's someone that is able to kind of shut their mind off to the risk.
Yeah.
And can deal with a lot of shit being thrown at them in a way that is actually can be quite damaging.
Yeah.
There's a lot of expectation on you as well.
Yeah.
And actually, if you look at the data, the likelihood of your success is very, very low. And defining success is also difficult to do because where's the line you draw? Is it a certain amount of money? But so many founders actually exit and go, oh yeah, I sold for hundreds of millions, but
they're miserable.
There was a huge preference stack. And actually they didn't get anything. And all the investors just got their money back. And no one really talks about that because they don't want to. Because it's not good for their story. So yeah.
And how would you define success for you right now? I mean, you see it purely in the business. Is there a personal component to it? Or maybe put differently, like if all the money wouldn't exist, would you still be doing that and still pushing there? Or would you kind of find your success somewhere else?
I think my mindset on what success is was defined on trying to prove to the world that it was wrong about me. Not that the world ever had an actual opinion, but my brain thought the world had an opinion.
Yeah.
And when you come to the realization that, and both in a good way and a bad way, no one really gives an F about you.
That's very true, actually. You always think like everyone will look at you, whatever you do and what you say and what have you. In reality, everyone looks out for themselves.
Exactly.
And that's what they really focus on.
Yeah.
You could probably say some incredible, stupid thing right now and people would speak about it for a couple of weeks, but it would literally be forgotten in their own thoughts, at some point.
Exactly.
In a way, a beautiful thought, actually, that anything you do, it doesn't really matter. So you might as well do what you really want.
Exactly. And then you get to the point where you're like, what am I doing? Then what is the purpose of my existence? And I think you come to a realization that it's just to do the best you can at something and be contented by the thing you're doing. And you end up doing a better job anyway. Yeah. You're not constantly thinking about external factors. Yeah. It's all about just doing the best you can. Yeah. And that's what I intend to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah. And I think also just letting go sometimes, because I also had these long periods actually where you work. And in a way, even if really good things happen in business, objectively fantastic things where you would have actually said, wow, if I would, the 3 years ago, Enrico, if he would have done that, that would be incredible. Yeah. But it didn't feel that way, Yeah. And for me, I can really pinpoint it. It's just you are overworked. If this is how you feel, you are overworked. And that's actually my big topic this year, like doing the experiment. How far can I go with delegation on the one side, but also how it's not about how many screws I screw in. It's about which, and I found 2 or 3 a year probably things to do. That's so far seems to work out pretty well, actually, where you just really focus on fewer things, do those incredible, and just let go of all the stress.
Yeah.
All the stress. And
absolutely.
It's even if you give 80% in or even 70%, let's be honest, if you do the right things, you're probably going to have the same output.
Yeah.
It's probably not great advice for young entrepreneurs because, I mean, they should work hard and really do it. But at the same time, it's not about just working hard. It's well, as the saying goes, it's really about working smart and what you want to do.
When you're younger, though, you need to make more mistakes, or you will make more mistakes. So by working harder, you make more right choices.
Yeah.
Overall.
But would you say it's the same for you, right? You try to do everything yourself at the very beginning, everything. And now in retrospect, you realize, most things were actually not so needed, actually. Like probably you could really boil it down professionally, but also personal life. The 2 or 3 things that really made the difference. And everything else is kind of structured around that decoration in a way.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what about the people on this path with you? Because I mean, that was quite a story, to be honest. I mean, it sounds like you've gone on a roller coaster first, fully up, felt amazing, then down, then a bit up, then fully down again, and then at the end, seems to have been great at the end, right? But the people around you then, like, did you have mentors who support you through the journey? Was it really your co-founders? Was it your senior management board? Like, who were the people who really kept you on the right track, or friends, family?
Yeah, well, I think most of that story is not about, obviously, I was talking a lot about my mental health there, but mostly about what happened to everyone else.
Yeah.
Really. And I think one regret I would probably have is not having mentors. And I think that's something about the UK, or maybe Europe in general, is people are a lot less willing to be your mentor than maybe they are in America and help you.
Yeah.
Where they don't have an economic incentive to do so.
It's true.
Because there isn't that mindset of like, we're all gonna, if we increase the tide, all the ships will float. It's much more zero sum, I think, in Europe.
Yeah.
But that said, I probably didn't put enough effort into finding someone to really lean on personally.
Yeah. So there wasn't like one person where you can pinpoint it and say, this advice at that point in time really saved us in a way.
No, it
Not
probably
really.
is, but
yeah,
I can't remember a specific moment or anything.
And now when you say you feel better than ever, like how do you notice this? Like you wake up in the morning, what's different than probably 5 years ago, right before that very, very down moment?
Yeah, I guess what's different than 5 years ago, it's stability, and not, I guess, in my brain was one thing, but in terms of how to make decisions, everything was so chaotic, which was fun, and I think actually quite addictive, especially if someone ADHD, it's like, right, constantly doing something, it's great. But a lack of chaos, I think, is super valuable, not just mentally, but also for the business. And
but do you think it's externally, or does it start in your head?
It's all about you.
It's all about you, right?
Yeah, I
agree.
It's your head, and it's I guess, I don't know how to describe it, but like being centered. That sounds very like mystic, but it's being centered in your brain and being calm and understanding what you're doing, and you're not looking for external validation.
Just good the way you are.
Yeah, exactly. And you know that you'll survive, be happy, and everything will be normal and kind of boring, but
but it's very true. But it's very true.
But I think it's the best way to live. And I think also there's a bit of maturity there, right? I think when you get to your 30s, I know you're not yet near them, but you get to your 30s and you're like, okay, different things matter. And I think that just happens. It's probably brain chemistry or something. But I think that does change the way you think about the world and what you're doing. And maybe on some people make them slightly less ambitious, which I would probably admit to being these days.
Yeah.
Because I used to want to fly a rocket to Mars.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's more, you have a formula, it works, where you're navigating the ship still, right? You're still the CEO, right? And but it's less about now conquering the world and doing all that. It's just about, I have a solid business, I'm happy, most important, because I guess that's kind of what matters at the end. Even if you're a billionaire and you're unhappy every day, probably it's not the way.
It's interesting. I think happiness is a short-term emotion that you can feel in a moment. I think maybe being content is a more long-term emotion. But even then, I've always thought, what is the value of happiness? What's even the value of being content? You know, is there something deeper or more fulfilling that you actually look back on your life and go, yeah, sure, I wasn't happy all the time, but I did something meaningful. I guess that's what I've always looked at and has driven me, but I'm not really sure what that is. But
yeah, I agree with you. It's more kind of the lens you purposefully put on, you know, like from which perspective do you look at it? Like, do you look at it, okay, do I set my brain to I'm mediocre most of the time, and then in some short periods where I'm super, super happy? Or do I just look at it, wow, I'm breathing, it's great. And literally it sounds so silly and so stupid, but if you actually believe it, it makes all the difference, actually. And you really probably if things go all right around you, you know, if you're healthy, right, first and foremost, if you have more or less a good business, there will always be stressors in business, but if you have more or less a good business, if you have all of that, then it's just a switch you need to kind of find in your brain where you say, okay, I choose to look at it that way. Because there's always the pessimistic view where you say, okay, as we are speaking right now, there's probably 54 new emails in my inbox that just landed. There's 73 new Slack messages, and then there's probably even more WhatsApp messages from all the silly groups you're in, right?
Yes.
And I gotta get back to all of them and ASAP, and otherwise it's chaos. And there's always the way of looking at it like that, or you just say, look, it's fine. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. It doesn't really matter if let's say reply today, tomorrow, in a week. Well, if they need something really, they're gonna come back. That's my view, and it's all about this perspective, I think. Is it the same for you?
I think absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. That's been sounds like quite the roller coaster. I think it's actually much more common in entrepreneurs to go through something like that than just all the roses. And I mean, probably when people meet you the first 5 minutes, they see, wow, now he's leading Airbnb management company, hundreds of million host revenue, what have you, right? But they wouldn't think that, I think. They wouldn't think that.
No, I think that's actually, I think, quite a problem. But there's a glamorization of success.
Yeah.
And we do need to actually talk about what that journey actually looks like and what people are actually signing up for. It's a bit like, I mean, it's the whole social media thing. You know, people go, oh, this model, it looks great. Why don't I look like that? I guess it's exactly the same for business. It's like, why am I not really successful already? Well, because most people aren't. And even the people that are weren't along the way.
And that's what you learn. I've met very poor people, millionaires, even a couple of billionaires, and at the end, they are all the same. Yeah. Actually, they are really similar. And it's a journey that someone went through, yes. Sometimes a bit of luck, but if you compare yourself, you're always gonna. I mean, it's kind of a thin line, you know. On the one hand, you want to compare yourself to other people because you want to get better, right? You want to kind of use it positively to fuel yourself. But at the same time, there's always going to be the guy, even if you have a Ferrari, he's going to have a helicopter. And the guy who has a helicopter, he's going to have a castle. And the guy who has a castle, he's going to, have a lion at his home or what have you, right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be more.
Yeah.
And I think this is really, I hope as a society, we can kind of go away from that. And just if everyone finds their happiness, within themselves, that's actually the real richness.
And a bit morbid, but we all end up in the same place.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah. How do you look at that? Because I'm some people would describe you probably as a bit of a pessimistic worldview where I say, everything comes and goes and nothing really matters, because literally as we speak, I mean, okay, maybe we're lucky with AI and biology doing a breakthrough and we might live 150 years, but we're not going to live 1,000 years.
No.
Far from it. I mean, maybe, but I'm not sure I even want that. And what is the thing about actually? Like, it's on the one side, it's great because you can kind of rectify the bad things that happen to you.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's terrible if you look at it this way, because the great things also are kind of out of proportion. I mean, some would call it like a bit of a stoic philosophy. Do you subscribe to that, or how do you handle this this finiteness of everything?
Yeah, it's something that's really related to me recently, actually. And I don't know why it suddenly started relating to me. But in fact, just last couple of weeks ago, I put up this, it's very morbid. I put up this chart on my wall. It's circles. And in each circle, it represents 1 week of your likely life. And I think it goes down to like 85 or so.
Yeah.
And I've still not filled in all the circles, because to get down just to 34 takes a hell of a long period of time. But even visualizing, that, it's like, wow, okay. And how much of that am I actually going to be healthy in? Not an awful lot. It drives you forward. I think you can look at it morbidly and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to die, shit. Or you can take it as motivation, Why am I still in bed? Why am I warm under the covers? Why don't I get out of bed and actually do something with my life? Because I haven't got much of it left. It's
again just a perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's so many tools you can use and so many different perspectives. You can look at the things, and well, in a way, it's about cherry picking what really works for you, just to make you feel good in that specific moment. And I mean, for me, I'm very much in that camp. I'm really, my wife always says I'm burying people, like in a way that I'm just calling it out as it is. I mean, we're not going to be here in 80 years, right? That's just the truth. I mean, maybe yes, but probably not.
Yeah.
And it's very, it pumps me up in a way, as weird as it sounds, but it really pumps me up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the greatest, Roman emperors back then, they had everything in the world, right? And now they have nothing, basically. They absolutely have nothing. So I think life is probably too short to feel those bad emotions too long. Steve Jobs had this saying. It was something like, every morning he wakes up and he looks at himself in the mirror, I think. And whenever he didn't felt like doing something today, then like for too many days in a row, he knew it was time to change, and just to do something else. And I think it's very true. I think every entrepreneur, like on the one side, people say, you need to push. But if it's so much resistance in one way, at some point, it's also good to open up the brain and think, okay, like what really matters to me? And then the answer might be, okay, I'm going to keep pushing. I mean, this is what you did, right? And it worked out perfectly. And another way could be, okay, we're going to completely pivot. Another way can be something completely else once again. I think at the end, it's very individual once again. And we just need the people happy on the planet. If there's happy people, don't start wars,
That's true.
It's sounds so simple.
Yeah,
but
it's a shame people are getting less happy.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, we're in London right now. Right? I was riding the tube here, and you see the people. They don't look really satisfied. Really, like you. I'm a pretty happy guy. I tend to smile a lot, as you noticed, but it's almost weird if you're just happy on a tube and just looking around and life is good, and that's an odd thing to do when in reality it shouldn't, right? It should just be normal. And I mean, my view is social media has a lot of to do with that. Actually, it's just the dopamine levels of people who you can't get that high anywhere else. It's a bit like drugs. You get that dopamine spike. Nothing in the real world will excite you as much as this one.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this is so important. This long format things where we stabilize dopamine levels of the people, and they actually, hopefully they watch the whole thing. But if they do, they go away from this TikTokification of our world. I think it's bloody terrible. Actually, how do you look at this?
You're not going to put a hook at the beginning of the video then to get people hooked in.
Well, maybe I will. Let's see. But maybe this is the hook. Who knows?
That's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. So, what's next for you? How do you feel right now about your business? So you've been doing this for 10 plus years, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I obviously said it was Boxing Day where it kind of started, but it became like the thing I was doing.
Yeah.
At the beginning of February 2015. So today is towards the end of January. So I'm looking from February to do something else, not necessarily full time, but I'm definitely going to start something else. Looking at legal tech, looking at fintech, legal tech, crossovers. We'll see.
And how are you going to structure the existing business? You're gonna keep it, or you're gonna sell it, or you're gonna hire someone? What's the setup you're thinking of?
Yeah, I've been really lucky in my senior leadership team now is really good, and pretty much I have, in terms of the running of the business, only one direct report, and that's my managing director.
Yeah.
So, and he's running it right now while I'm here with you, and hopefully he can take the bulk of the workload going forward as well.
So now your inbox is not too full, thanks to him.
Still full, unfortunately.
Still full.
Yeah.
Still full, huh?
Still full. But hopefully we'll get less full soon.
So what is this feeling that now drives you to something new? Because I mean, you could just be content. I assume if your hosts make hundreds of millions, I'm sure your revenue is just fine, right? And probably also your payout is just fine. What drives you to do something new, and why?
Yeah, well, what isn't driving me is what drove me to start the business. As I said earlier, it's that kind of like proving myself.
Yeah,
I kind of proved myself to the person that matters to a certain extent, and that's me.
Yeah.
What drives me now is being interested. I guess your Steve Jobs point, looking at yourself in the mirror and going, am I fulfilled? Am I driving the thing I want to drive? And the answer is coming now, probably not. And I want to go and explore new things.
Yeah.
And I have lots of interests, and AI.
Yeah.
Going to join that bandwagon? Who knows? But I think it's obviously going to change the world. It's the new internet.
Oh yeah.
I think someone said we're in 1996. The next 5 years are going to be key. We're going to know. We're going to see the next Amazon already. Yeah. Probably already maybe have in someone like OpenAI or something like that. But I think that there's a huge market opportunity there, and it's going to change the world.
Oh, it will. I mean, think just 10 years ago, all the technology that we have now versus back then, and then think 10 more years ago, right? We were literally, I remember the video games I was playing as a kid, and versus right now, it's even there, you just see like such a massive switch, and realizing that we're actually nowhere still. We're still, as stupid as it sounds, we're still using kind of our fingers to type. Probably it's going to change to voice or even your brain interface or whatever. And probably AI is just going to play a huge role in all of that. And things people are slowly getting ready. I mean, quite frankly, Europe is sleeping a bit. I mean, they're thinking about putting a beautiful cup on a plastic bottle, right? Instead of actually thinking about AI, while the US and China are really pushing. And how do you actually look at that? The progress you see in the US, right? In China, in India, in Russia, in all kind of already the developed nations, but also developing nations, and in Europe. For me, I see a huge discrepancy of progress and of the willingness of pushing and of actually picking the right topics, to go on and execute. Like, you grew up in the UK, right? You've been here pretty much your whole life, right? You had a brief session in New York, but pretty much your whole life. You have a bit of the comparison also, US kind of values and vibes versus UK values or European vibes. How do you look at that? Where do you think the UK is going to be in the coming years? Factoring in AI, factoring in crypto, factoring in just anything that kind of is going on right now. What is like your view on that?
You know what? I think it actually really makes me angry.
Makes you angry?
It makes me angry. Yeah. I think, the best nations, the ones that push themselves forward, are the ones that take risks and allow entrepreneurs, businesses, and the rest to take risks. And I think the UK is doing the opposite of that. I think the EU is doing the opposite of that. I think China is opening the doors to AI. The DeepSeek thing we've seen in just the last few days,
it's incredible.
Is crazy. Yes, it's basically built on OpenAI, but the price difference is absolutely mental, and we can't let China win on something so fundamental to our future. And it angers me that the UK is just sleepwalking into the past. We haven't, freed up regulation. We haven't cut taxes. We haven't become more competitive. We're still got a huge welfare state, and we think that that's going to see us through to the next decades. It isn't. What's going to see us through is developing technologies that's going to look after people. It's going to healthcare that can automatically recognize diseases. All these different innovations that just we're not even allowing to take place. And that's not just the current government that just come in; it's the one before. And I hate to say it, that maybe the crazy lady Liz Truss was a bit right. She did it the wrong way, but she was right in that we need to do something different. We need to put our foot on the accelerator. We need to take a risk as a nation and as a continent, frankly. Otherwise, we're going to be the forgotten empires of the past, and that will just be our role in history.
And that's exactly what's happening right now. I mean, actually, with the small island of Switzerland, which has been doing quite a right job, actually. Of course, there's things we can still tweak there, but doing a quite a right job. Just Europe as a whole is really lacking behind massively. And I think only now people are waking up from this, and only now people are seeing, oh, wow, that's how India is doing it right now with their, billions of people, right? Or really a lot of people there, and China, billions of people, and really just a large chunk of the population who's hungry, who's really, who wants to push, who's allowed to push, who is pushing, And I think it kind of goes back to the thing I said before, which screws are you gonna screw in? And it seems like the West, the so-called West, right? Now it's getting a bit better in the US, but the so-called West probably has been focusing on the wrong screws. While, let's call it as it is. China, they don't innovate, they copy, right? Then Europe regulates, that's kind of the famous saying. But they are catching up, and they are not stopping anytime soon. And I think unless we have a major switch in the European, mentality or maybe even culture. I don't know if it's culture, but something that was driving kind of this non-innovative regulation, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and if we look at history, and I don't think we think about this too much, but the Industrial Revolution could probably be directly linked to World War I and World War II. And if we let ourselves go behind in technology and not look at how to innovate and get ahead of competitors, that's kind of what they are in the world, then we're going to find ourselves at the wrong end of a world war and with the wrong technology and still focusing on a welfare state and making sure everyone is as comfortable as possible.
In a way, Elon Musk had actually this good idea. For every new law, there needs to be like an expiry date. And if we still think after 50 years, this is a bloody good idea, let's vote it in again. But for now, just what happened, in Switzerland too, by the way, there's a regulation for everything. And on the one side, okay, that's good in certain aspects, right? For example, when it comes to, healthcare or insurance companies not ripping you off, all okay, right? But in other aspects, it's just ridiculous. And it's really not where we need to go. We need to, just go back to common sense, I think. And it sounds so easy, but I think it's the culture switch is just starting now, actually. And some things seems to happen. I feel this, in Europe, in the States. You feel this energy. It's starting to change. But I think we probably could have done a bit more the last couple of, years or decades even, probably.
Yeah. And right now, it's clearly the inflection point on where we need to make different decisions.
Make or break.
And I think the world is feeling that now. You can kind of feel nations especially in Europe, the UK, I guess America with the election of Trump again, saying we need to do something differently. We're going to be left behind if we don't change something, if we don't take a risk, if we don't do more and quicker. And I think, if we don't, we'll be left behind. And I don't think the consequences of that will be very good.
No, and I mean, for me, it's ridiculous when I hear entrepreneurs, who, I don't know, owned factories or what have you in Germany, and they pivot to Switzerland because it's cheaper.
Wow.
It's like something is just, Switzerland is everything but cheap, right? As you know, so it is, something is just going terribly wrong there, terribly wrong. And I really hope they can fix it. I really, really hope they can fix it. And just focusing on the right issues, I think, on the right thing. And I think that would make all the difference. For you, what would that be if you would have to set the priorities? If you would speak for the European continent as a whole, I know it's difficult and it's a thought experiment, but if you would, what would be your top priorities? I already heard a bit technological innovation, of course. What would you push forward?
I guess one thing I would push forward is the rebuilding of community. And I think part of that is people on their phones stuck to their screens and all that. But a large part of it we've lost is people feeling together. And I think you still get that in some villages and that sort of thing. And I think those people are a lot more happy, a lot more effective. And
they grow older, actually.
Yes.
They grow older.
Exactly. And they live longer. So that's a huge thing that we need to reintroduce somehow. I don't have the answer as to how to do that. And as you say, technology, we need to take risks. We need to allow entrepreneurs to take risks all across Europe. And hopefully we can do some of that in the UK too. But tax breaks for entrepreneurs that take risks. If I go and start a business tomorrow, I don't get any tax relief on any penny that I put into my next business. I think that's crazy. We should be incentivizing entrepreneurs to go and build new businesses in new areas and not letting America and China take the prize. And you see what's happening right now with crypto, right? Where in the US, for the longest time, they were not regulating it. They did an even worse thing. They just didn't do anything. And they were just using the law arbitrarily to prosecute whatever the SEC right now thinks is the new bad thing around the block, And well, what happened? Crypto didn't stop. No, not at all. Crypto kept moving. Crypto went to Zug, where I have my company. It went to Dubai. It went to Cyprus. It went to all over the place, right? And who lost? The US. And I think now they're switching that, right? Now they really see, okay, the trend is not going to stop. The crypto trend is not going to stop. The AI trend is not going to stop. Many other new trends we're not even thinking of right now are not going to stop. And we need to be the playing field. And otherwise, it's China, it's India, it's Russia. They will all do it. They will all do it. And that's just not good for our prosperity. If we are not part of the new big thing, it's going to end up very bad for us. It's not just about prosperity too. If we put the keys to the world in the hands of autocrats and frankly people that aren't democratically elected, then we're going to have a major problem. And we don't need to look anywhere else other than history to see that problem.
And I don't even want to combine that with AI and with whatever weird, strange things you will be able to do there. If you really have bad intentions, I think you will be able to do terrible things, quite frankly. And that really is to be avoided. But I think we can only avoid it from a position of strength, not from a position of weakness. And in a way, you see that right now. I would say Europe is more in a position of weakness. And the other parties around Europe are really, most of the US are able to dictate whatever they're doing, right? It's not a good setup for us right now. It's not a gig I would want to be a part of, to be honest.
Absolutely not. Maybe we should move to America.
Well, they also have their problems, I think. Switzerland has a pretty good system actually for that. It's pretty hard for the smart people to come into Switzerland. That's what I'm kind of observing. When you're really, really smart, it's still not as trivial as just, you come to Switzerland, you help our country. But besides that, actually the US model, the US state who actually was modeled after Switzerland, they just did a couple of tweaks, some good, some bad, right? But Switzerland as a whole is actually pretty good designed, you know, also distribution of power. We don't have one president, we have 7. And I think that's a model that would be good. I mean, the very left parties have to work with the very right parties in Switzerland, and they have to have a consensus on what are we actually doing about the actual problem. They have to have discussions, you know. And I think this is probably the biggest problem right now in the West, that it's the left thinks the right is bad, the right thinks the left is bad, and they both have points, but they also both not have points, you know. And we just need to not think about or just say like, you are bad, I'm good, and vice versa. We need to think, okay, this is the issue at hand. What ideas do you bring to the table? Actual ideas on how we can solve that. And that's probably the root cause, how I see it at least, of what happened. We stopped talking about the actual issues, and we were polarized, probably even a bit manipulated, not a bit, a lot manipulated by the media that has an agenda on both sides, you know, depending which media outlet you look. If you were following the presidential election in the US, I mean, Kamala was saying Trump is, let's not even say it. And Trump was saying Kamala is, well, let's also not say it. But it was quite a kindergarten. It was quite mad, actually. Instead of thinking, okay, we have these problems, let's exchange ideas. They were insulting each other on stage. And probably Russia, China, they were eating popcorn while we're at it, you know, and they were really saying, oh, wow, this democracy thing is really working well for them, huh? Probably, right?
Yeah.
And that's just a big problem.
Yeah.
And that Switzerland does really well. Distribution of power, not one president. Well, we don't call it presidents, but it doesn't really matter, but 7. And really together, you know, building together and discussing ideas rather than insulting each other. I would hope that we have more of that in the UK, of course, because for me, I also see a bit of the wrong trend. I mean, I've been to London probably 10, 15 times, if not 20. It changed a bit also. I don't know, the really good people are leaving. They're going to Dubai, they're going to all sorts of places. I mean, same things happening to Norway, right? All the good people, all the good Norwegians, a lot of them are now in Zug, where I'm from. They're all in Switzerland.
I guess it's because there's an environment to take risks.
Yeah.
In those places that there isn't. Yeah, I mean, when I started House, there was this fire in London. There was this ambition that just doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
I feel like it's even worse than it was 10 years ago, where people look at you and like, oh, you know, if you've been successful, then there must be something, you know, slightly wrong with you, or it doesn't really fit in the UK. And that's why loads of people want to leave. And then they get taxed huge amounts for staying. So no wonder you want to leave. But to counter your point on, you know, having consensus, you could argue that having, you know, definitive leadership is good. And I think the way I see it is what we need to do is bring the entrepreneurial mindset into the public life and say, what experiments are we going to run? What 5 things are we going to try? And what are the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve?
Split testing.
Exactly.
And
4 of the 5 will fail. And we need to accept, you know, fine, politics, the rest of it, whatever. 4 of those experiments will fail, but that 5th one will have a meaningful impact on the thing you're trying to improve. And then we keep that one. We just rinse and repeat until we solve as many problems as we can.
But how do we solve that? How do we bring entrepreneurs into the nasty business that is politics? Because quite frankly, it's much less sexy than being an entrepreneur. And it's much less probably rewarding than being an entrepreneur. And I mean, if you look at the people, instead of actually thinking about the problems, they inform themselves with political posters in 2 or 3 lines. And that's just probably not the best way to make up your mind, you know? Whatever direction you vote for, then it doesn't really matter, right? How do we actually get more of this entrepreneurial thinking into the state? Probably we'll have less state, actually more efficient states. I mean, in the US, they're trying this right now. I think it could end up rather good, actually, from what I'm seeing so far. I mean, it's still very early to judge. But how would you approach that, really pushing more entrepreneurs into it? Maybe you should do it.
Well, you know, maybe one day. But I think what we need to do is, as you say, reduce the size of the state. I think that's the most important thing. Reduce the size of the state, and that means less taxes, more competitive atmosphere for businesses, entrepreneurs, and frankly, people being able to solve problems. And we've seen it in the 70s in the UK and America in the 80s. you do need to reduce the size of the state in order to push business to grow. And we had huge economic growth in both those times. And coming into this AI era without that competitive tax system, without people feeling motivated and incentivized to go and do big things, you're not going to get those sorts of changes. So for me, it's about reducing the size of the state and accepting some of the things that come along with that.
Yeah, just looking at history, the good, the bad, and just doing more of the good, less of the bad. I think that would actually go a very long way. And yeah, I think that's probably what we should focus on the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
Well, James, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for, quite frankly, this incredible story, first and foremost. Also that we were able to pick your brain on current topics. And I would actually love to do a second round, maybe sometime later this year, maybe next year. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.